Ancient Egypt, Mesopotamia, and the Andes built near identical pyramids across impossible distances. This video reveals the evidence for a lost global network of knowledge, transforming your understanding of human history. You will discover how civilizations separated by oceans and millennia constructed the same complex structures with the same advanced astronomy encoded within. Why did they all choose the pyramid shape, and what forgotten catastrophe might they be trying to warn us about? What does this say about our own world's hidden connections? The odds of this happening by chance are astronomically low. We are asked to believe that three separate human societies, born in vastly different environments and separated by thousands of years, all independently arrived at the same architectural and astronomical conclusions. It defies logic. Imagine finding an identical blueprint for a complex machine in a workshop in ancient Egypt, another in Mesopotamia, and a third high in the Peruvian mountains. You would not conclude that three different inventors had the same brilliant idea in isolation. You would suspect they were all working from the same original plan. This is the foundation of our mystery. These civilizations did not just build similar mounds of earth, they constructed precise, geometrically complex pyramids, aligning them with celestial bodies with an accuracy that still baffles engineers today. The timeline makes this even more perplexing. The Great Pyramids of Egypt were ancient history by the time the Mesoamerican Olmecs began their own monumental work, and the Andean cultures like Caral were building their pyramids even earlier. They were not contemporaries. They could not have copied one another through conventional means of trade or travel. This staggering similarity points to something else entirely, a shared source of knowledge that spanned the globe in a forgotten age. This idea of a lost mother culture, a sophisticated civilization wiped from memory by some cataclysm, has been championed by independent researchers for decades. It is a theory that forces us to question the established story of human history, a story of slow, isolated progress. What if that story is wrong? What if, long before recorded history, there was a global network, a common teacher that left its lesson plans scattered across the world? The evidence we are about to uncover does not just suggest this possibility. It builds a compelling case that our ancient past is far more mysterious and interconnected than we have ever been taught. The stones themselves are the first and most undeniable witnesses. Walk up to the Great Pyramid of Giza and run your hand over the limestone blocks, each one weighing multiple tons. They are fitted together with seams so fine they are almost invisible, a jigsaw puzzle of immense scale that has survived for thousands of years. This is not random piling. It is precision engineering of the highest order, demanding a profound understanding of mathematics, weight distribution, and material science. Now shift your gaze to the ancient ziggurats of Mesopotamia. Though often made of sun-dried brick with a baked brick exterior, their core construction principles reveal the same staggering ambition. These were massive, tiered mountains of stone and earth, built to withstand the ages, their very form a testament to a mastery of large-scale project management and structural integrity. Finally, travel across the world to the high Andes and stand before the walls of Sacsayhuamán. Here, the stonework becomes almost unbelievable. Enormous blocks, some weighing over 100 tons, are carved into complex, irregular polygonal shapes. They lock together without a single drop of mortar, and the joints are so perfectly tight that you cannot slide a piece of paper between them. This is a three-dimensional stone puzzle that defies simple explanation. The common question is not just how they moved these stones, but how they conceived of such a method in the first place. independent researchers like Christopher Dunn have studied the tool marks left on these ancient stones and proposed that the builders used advanced machining techniques, a level of technology we do not attribute to these cultures. How did civilizations separated by oceans and centuries all develop this same specific, brilliant solution to the problem of permanent construction? The use of massive, perfectly fitted stone is more than a stylistic choice. It is a shared architectural language, a core set of engineering principles that seems to have been transferred, not independently invented time and time again. This identical fingerprint on 3 different continents points to a single, sophisticated source of knowledge. The stones are only the beginning of the story. To truly understand the connection, we must look upward to the stars. The heavens served as a universal clock and map for these ancient builders, and their ability to read this celestial blueprint reveals another layer of impossible similarity. The Great Pyramid of Giza is not merely a pile of rocks, it is a machine aligned with the cosmos. Its base is oriented to true north with an accuracy that would challenge modern engineers, and its narrow internal shafts point directly to key stars like those in the belt of Orion, stars that held profound religious significance. This was not a lucky guess, it was an act of precise astronomical engineering. Far to the east, in the heart of Mesopotamia, the great ziggurat of Ur served a similar purpose. This massive stepped tower was not just a temple, it was an ancient observatory. Its very orientation was tied to the movements of the moon and planets, allowing priest astronomers to track celestial events with remarkable sophistication. They were mapping the sky from the top of a man-made mountain. Then, crossing the world to the high Andes, we find the same story written in sunlight and shadow. The Coricancha, the central temple of the Inca Empire in Cusco, was a masterpiece of solar alignment. Its walls and windows were designed so that on the solstices and equinoxes, the sun's rays would illuminate specific sacred niches with breathtaking accuracy. At Machu Picchu, the enigmatic Intihuatana stone, a beautifully carved rock pillar, functions as a sophisticated astronomical clock. Its angles and shadows mark the exact dates of the solar equinoxes, pinning the sun in place, as the name itself implies. How could cultures separated by continents and millennia all achieve this same level of precise celestial knowledge? The archaeoastronomer Dr. Giulio Magli has studied these alignments extensively, noting that their accuracy required a deep, mathematical understanding of celestial mechanics. This was not simple sun worship, it was a science, and it was a science they all shared. Each of these civilizations also developed complex calendars, intricate systems tracking the sun and moon, which were absolutely essential for planting crops and organizing their ritual lives. This parallel grasp of cosmic cycles is a second, powerful fingerprint. It suggests they were not just looking at the same stars, they were working from the same foundational textbook of astronomical knowledge. This shared celestial language points to a common source, a forgotten teacher who understood that the secrets of human survival were written in the sky above. We find this same pattern carved not just in stone, but deep within their shared imagination. Across the vast distances separating Egypt, Mesopotamia, and the Andes, 2 potent symbols emerge again and again, as if drawn from the same sacred source. The serpent and the sun were not just decorative motifs, they were the very pillars of their spiritual universe. In ancient Egypt, the uraeus cobra was a symbol of ultimate power, coiled and ready to strike from the brow of the pharaoh. It was a living emblem of royalty and divine protection, a creature that connected the earthly ruler to the gods, and above all reigned the sun god Ra, the creator who sailed his bark across the sky each day, bringing light, order, and life to the world. His daily journey was the heartbeat of Egyptian existence. Thousands of miles away, in the city-states of Mesopotamia, we see a startlingly similar pantheon. Their art and cylinder seals frequently depict the serpentine form of the god Ningishida, a deity associated with the underworld, healing, and the fertile, life-giving forces of the earth. And shining down upon all was Shamash, the all-seeing sun god, who was not only the bringer of light but also the divine judge, the guarantor of justice and truth. Now cross the Atlantic and ascend into the high Andes. Here, the Amaru serpent is a foundational creator being, a winged serpent deity representing the water that carves the mountains and the wisdom of the earth itself. And just as in the Old World, the sun was the supreme celestial force, in Tai, the sun god was considered the divine ancestor of the Inca emperor himself, the source of all authority and the engine of the agricultural cycle. How can we explain this incredible consistency? Comparative mythologists like Dr. John Major Jenkins have long argued that these are not just coincidences. The serpent across these cultures consistently embodies the primal energies of the earth, the chthonic power of rebirth, and the hidden rivers of wisdom that flow beneath the surface of reality. The sun, in every case, represents cosmic order, divine authority, and the cyclical nature of time itself, of death and rebirth on a grand celestial scale. These are not just random gods, they are universal archetypes. The fact that these three specific, isolated civilizations chose to build their entire cosmological understanding around this identical pair of symbols is profoundly telling. It suggests a shared mythological framework, a common spiritual vocabulary that somehow spanned the globe. This points to something deeper than traded goods or chance encounters. It hints at a diffusion of core ideas, a common thread of belief woven into the very fabric of their collective consciousness, long before our history books say such a connection was even possible. This shared obsession with the pyramid shape is one of the most powerful clues. Why would a civilization in the rain-soaked Mesopotamian plains, another in the arid Egyptian desert, and a third in the high Andean mountains all look to the heavens and decide to build a stairway? The answer lies not in the stone but in the spirit. The pyramid was far more than a building, it was a cosmic engine. In Egypt, as renowned archaeologist Dr. Sacsayhuamán has articulated, the pyramid was a resurrection machine. Its smooth, sloping sides were designed to catapult the soul of the pharaoh directly to the stars, to join the eternal cycle of the sun god Ra. It was a launch pad for divinity. Across the world, the Mesopotamian ziggurat served a similar yet inverted purpose. It was not a tomb but a dwelling place. Its massive stepped tiers created a holy mountain, a literal staircase upon which the gods could descend from their celestial realms to commune with humanity. The priests would ascend this man-made peak to meet them halfway, and high in the Andes, the sacred Ushnu platforms fulfilled this same cosmic function. These were not just viewing stands, they were focal points of ritual and power. From these elevated stone stages, rulers would make offerings to Intai, the sun god, and observe the precise movements of the stars, physically and symbolically placing themselves at the center of the universe. The convergence is undeniable. Each culture, using the materials available to them, constructed a truncated, ascending form to bridge the ultimate divide, the chasm between the human world and the realm of the gods. This was not a random architectural trend. It was a shared ideological blueprint, a universal understanding that the path to the divine was not a horizontal journey, but a vertical ascent. They all looked up and saw the same cosmic ladder, and they all built their own rungs from stone. The most vital resource for any civilization is water, and here again we find the same pattern of impossible expertise. To sustain their vast populations, these cultures did not merely find water, they commanded it, bending rivers to their will with an engineering genius that still inspires awe today. In Egypt, the entire civilization was a gift of the Nile, but it was a gift they had to earn. They constructed an elaborate network of canals and basin irrigation systems, creating a rhythmic, annual dance with the river's flood. They built regulators and sluices to trap the nutrient-rich waters, turning the desert into a continuous green belt. This was not simple digging, it was a profound understanding of hydrology and seasonal flow. Far to the east, the Mesopotamians faced an even greater challenge, taming the twin titans of the Tigris and Euphrates rivers. Their solution was a breathtaking web of canals, dikes, and massive reservoirs, a system so complex it required a permanent class of engineers to maintain it. They were not just moving water, they were storing it, measuring it, and distributing it with mathematical precision across their farmlands. Now, travel across the world to the high Andes, where the Inca confronted a completely different environment, steep mountainsides and irregular rainfall. Their answer was perhaps the most brilliant of all. At places like Tupan, they built a masterpiece of hydraulic engineering, a series of stone-lined aqueducts and fountains that used gravity to deliver a perfectly controlled flow of water down intricate terraces. The water channels are so precise, the angles so calculated, that they function flawlessly to this day. Engineering historian Dr. Charles Ortloff has studied these systems in depth, revealing that the builders understood advanced principles of fluid dynamics. They knew how to control water pressure, prevent erosion, and design channels that maintained a constant flow rate over long distances. This is not primitive irrigation, it is the work of hydraulic scientists. How could three separate civilizations, dealing with three unique river systems and climates, all arrive at the same sophisticated level of environmental engineering? The development of such complex, gravity-fed water networks in complete isolation stretches credibility. It suggests something profound, a possible transfer of core engineering knowledge, a shared understanding of how to harness the planet's most essential force. This mastery of water was the key to their survival, and it appears they all learned from the same foundational textbook. The mastery of stone and water finds a brilliant echo in the transformative power of fire. The sophisticated working of metals provides another tantalizing clue in this global mystery. Ancient Egypt was renowned for its breathtaking gold work, crafting funerary masks and jewelry of such purity and detail they seem otherworldly. In Mesopotamia, the innovation was bronze, an alloy of copper, and tin that revolutionized toolmaking and warfare. And high in the Andes, artisans achieved what many believed was impossible for their time, working not only with gold and silver but with platinum, a metal with an extraordinarily high melting point that demands furnace temperatures in excess of 3,000 degrees Fahrenheit. The appearance of complex metallurgical processes across these regions is too specific to be coincidence. The science of smelting, of extracting pure metal from raw rock, appears fully formed. The art of alloying, of mixing metals to create new, stronger materials like bronze, is present in each location. Most tellingly, the intricate lost wax casting method is found in all three centers of civilization. This is not a simple technique. It involves sculpting an object in wax, encasing it in clay to create a mold, then melting the wax out and pouring molten metal into the resulting cavity. It is a multi-step chemical and physical process that requires precise knowledge of temperatures, material behavior, and timing. How does such specific, complex knowledge arise independently? The archaeometallurgist Dr. Heather Lechman's extensive study of Andean metalwork highlights techniques that, while distinct in style, achieved a similarly refined and advanced level of results. The knowledge of which specific ores to use, how to build furnaces capable of reaching the necessary blistering temperatures, and the skill to craft intricate, durable objects all imply a developed, systematic material science. This is not trial and error. This is the application of accumulated technical knowledge. Could this expertise have been carried by itinerant master artisans, traveling vast distances to share the secrets of their craft? Or perhaps even more radically, were there shared technical manuscripts, blueprints for smelters and formulas for alloys, that circulated along routes we have yet to discover? The parallel advancement in such a difficult and dangerous field as metallurgy points directly to a network of practical knowledge, a web of shared innovation that completely ignored the conventional geographic barriers we assume kept these ancient worlds apart. This was not just a shared belief system, but a shared toolkit for mastering the very elements of the earth. The drive to record their world binds these civilizations in another profound way. They all developed complex systems of writing, a monumental leap in human thought that moved knowledge from the fleeting spoken word to a permanent, tangible form. In Egypt, scribes meticulously carved hieroglyphs into stone, a beautiful and sacred script where a single symbol could represent a sound, an object, or an entire idea. Far to the east, in Mesopotamia, they pressed wedge-shaped marks into soft clay tablets, creating the intricate system known as cuneiform. This was not simple picture writing. It was a sophisticated script used for everything from epic poetry to tax records. And high in the Andes, the Inca developed the quipu, a fascinating and unique system of knotted strings. The color, position, and type of knot on these cords encoded vast amounts of information, a tactile language for recording census data, stories, and astronomical cycles. Though these systems appear utterly different on the surface, they share a deep, underlying similarity. Each one is a complex, symbolic code that required years of specialized training to master. They were not for the common person. They were the exclusive tools of a scribal class, the administrators and priests who held the power of recorded knowledge. This act of creating a permanent record for administration, for history, and for religion marks an identical stage in intellectual development. It is the moment a society decides it must speak to the future. Some researchers have even pointed to more specific and highly controversial parallels. They suggest that certain glyphs representing fundamental concepts like water, sky, or God bear a striking resemblance to each other across these vast distances. A wavy line for water, a circle or star for a celestial body, these simple shapes appear again and again. While mainstream scholarship often dismisses this as coincidence, it forces a compelling question. Could these similarities be the faded echoes of a much older, shared symbolic language? Theorists like Dr. Genevieve von Petzinger, who studies the earliest geometric signs found in cave art across the world, suggest that the human impulse to create abstract symbols may have very deep, shared roots. The drive to codify knowledge, to pin down the chaos of the world into a durable, abstract form, is a cognitive leap that seems to have happened in parallel. But what if it was not parallel at all? What if it was the same leap taken by different branches of humanity who all inherited a fragment of the same ancient map? The glyphs and the knots are more than just writing. They are the fossilized thoughts of these cultures, and they all seem to be thinking about the same fundamental truths. This shared intellectual fingerprint suggests a journey toward complex society whose starting point we have yet to find. This shared view of time itself may be the deepest connection of all. While our modern world perceives history as a straight line marching from a primitive past toward a progressive future, these ancient builders saw existence as a great turning wheel. For the Egyptians, the universe underwent endless cycles of order descending into chaos, only to be restored once more by the power of the pharaoh and the gods. Their world was not moving forward in a line, but revolving through repeating epochs of creation and dissolution. In Mesopotamia, this concept was etched into their very creation myths, which described a series of world ages, each one destroyed by flood or fire, only to be reborn anew from the waters. This was not a one-time event, but a recurring pattern written into the fabric of reality. And high in the Andes, the concept of Pachacuti perfectly encapsulates this philosophy, a powerful term meaning a world reversal, a cataclysmic event that turns everything upside down to bring about a necessary renewal. This is fundamentally different from the linear timeline that would later dominate Western thought. Anthropologist Dr. Brian Fagan observes that this cyclical worldview was not born from simple superstition, but was deeply tied to precise astronomical observations, particularly the slow, grand wobble of the Earth known as the precession of the equinoxes. This 26,000-year cycle would have caused the starry vault of heaven to slowly shift over centuries, a celestial clock ticking on a scale almost beyond human comprehension. Yet these cultures seem to have understood its rhythm. The idea that time itself is cyclical, with golden ages giving way to dark ages, only to be cleansed and reborn in a great turning, is a profound philosophical commonality. It suggests they were not just looking at the same stars, but interpreting their long-term dance in the same way. This shared cosmic perspective directly shaped their societies, their stories, and the very stones they erected. Their pyramids and temples were not just monuments, they were anchors in the river of time, designed to withstand the great turnings of the world and to mirror the eternal, repeating patterns they saw in the night sky. This was an architecture built for eternity, conceived by minds that believed in cycles of death and rebirth, not a final end. This hidden knowledge was not for everyone. In every one of these civilizations, the profound understanding of the stars, the stones, and the seasons was guarded by a chosen few. A specialized intellectual elite stood apart from the kings and the commoners, holding the sacred keys to the universe. In ancient Egypt, it was the priesthood, a powerful class of scribes and astronomers who could read the celestial movements and perform the rituals that kept the cosmos in balance. They were the true engineers behind the pharaoh's divine power. In Mesopotamia, the scribes and astrologers, trained for years in complex cuneiform, did not just keep records, they calculated the motions of planets and advised rulers on the will of the gods. Their clay tablets were the hard drives of the ancient world, storing everything from epic poetry to advanced mathematics. And high in the Andes, the Inca Amortas, the wise teachers, were the living libraries of the empire. They preserved history, law, and astronomy through intricate oral traditions and the mysterious knotted strings of the quipu. Historian Dr. Miranda Aldhouse Green points out that these intellectual elites were absolutely essential. They were the glue that held these vast, complex states together, providing the cultural and technological coherence needed to build pyramids, manage irrigation, and rule effectively. They were more than just scholars, they were the institutional memory of their entire civilization. The emergence of this identical social structure, a cloistered class dedicated solely to the preservation and application of complex knowledge, is a stunning parallel. It indicates a societal blueprint where wisdom was not just valued, but systematically organized and protected. These priestly classes learned through secret initiations and guarded oral traditions, passing their secrets only to the worthy. This was not a public education system, it was a closed guild of master thinkers. Why would Egypt, Mesopotamia, and the Andes all evolve this same solution for managing knowledge? It is as if they all understood that for a civilization to achieve greatness and endure for centuries, it required a dedicated brain trust, a separate class whose only job was to think, calculate, and remember. This points to a common organizational model, a shared understanding that the most powerful tool a society can possess is not an army, but a permanent, specialized, and secretive academy of the mind. The intellectual elites of the ancient world may have guarded an even deeper secret, a science that measured the planet itself. The Great Pyramid of Giza sits at the exact center of the Earth's landmass, a fact so precise it defies simple coincidence. Some researchers argue its base perimeter, when multiplied by a specific constant, gives a value remarkably close to the Earth's equatorial circumference, as if the pyramid's very dimensions were a scale model of the planet. This is not primitive monument building, it is an act of global cartography in stone. Far to the east, the Mesopotamians left a different kind of clue baked into their clay tablets. Their advanced mathematics, based on a Sacsayhuamán system of 60, is a system we still use today to measure every hour, minute, and the very angles of a circle. This sophisticated numerical language was not created for simple accounting. It implies a fundamental understanding of spherical geometry, the kind needed to map the curved heavens and, by extension, a spherical Earth. While direct evidence from the Andes is more enigmatic, the Incas laid out their sacred landscape with breathtaking intention. From the Coricancha temple in Cusco, 41 invisible lines called sex radiated outward across the empire. These were not random paths, they were precise alignments connecting hundreds of sacred shrines, or huacas, in a vast planned network that organized space, time, and ritual. This system demonstrates a profound, almost intuitive grasp of geography on a grand scale. The evidence taken together points to a startling possibility. These cultures did not just understand their local terrain, they possessed the seeds of a global science, a geodetic awareness of the Earth's true shape and dimensions. How could they have known this? The idea that such advanced geographical knowledge was developed in complete isolation by three different civilizations stretches the limits of probability. It hints instead at a shared, forgotten heritage, a lost science of measuring the world that was once the common inheritance of humanity. But how could this shared knowledge have traveled across such vast, empty oceans? The most direct answer lies in the sea itself and the audacious mariners who dared to challenge it. Imagine the reed boats of the ancient Egyptians depicted on tomb walls gracefully navigating the Nile. Now shift your gaze to the high-altitude waters of Lake Titicaca in South America. Here, the Uros people have built and sailed remarkably similar vessels, boats crafted from bundled totora reeds for untold generations. The design is almost identical, a long, curved hull made from the same natural material. Is this merely another case of independent invention, of different minds finding the same solution? Or is it a clue pointing to a shared maritime tradition? The legendary explorer Thor Heyerdahl refused to believe it was impossible. In his daring Ra-2 expedition, he and his crew constructed a boat of papyrus reeds based on ancient Egyptian designs and successfully sailed it from Africa to the Caribbean, proving beyond doubt that such vessels were fully capable of crossing the Atlantic long before the age of Columbus. This was not a theoretical exercise, it was a physical demonstration that the ocean was a highway, not a barrier. The evidence does not stop with the boats themselves. Look at the very food these cultures ate. The sweet potato, a crop native to the Americas, was found growing across Polynesia long before European contact. How did this New World plant find its way to countless Pacific islands? The most logical explanation is that someone brought it there, that ancient voyagers carried these vital tubers on their long journeys, planting them on new shores. These botanical fingerprints are as telling as any carved stone, while many mainstream historians remain skeptical, preferring to see isolated cultural development. The cumulative weight of this evidence is compelling. The similar boats, the transferred crops, the shared symbols, they all point in one direction. We are not necessarily talking about a continuous, scheduled trade route, but about sporadic, epochal voyages, journeys of discovery that happened often enough to weave a thin but resilient web of connection across the globe. A single successful crossing every few generations would have been enough. It would have been enough for a master stonemason to share the secret of fitting polygonal blocks, for a priest astronomer to teach the method of tracking the precession of the equinoxes, for a storyteller to pass down the epic of the serpent and the sun. The transfer of a single, powerful idea can echo for millennia. If such contact occurred, it rewrites the story of human ingenuity, suggesting that our ancestors were far more connected and far more courageous than we have ever dared to believe. These flood stories are too similar and too specific to be ignored. In the Mesopotamian epic of Gilgamesh, the hero Utnapishtim is warned by a god to build a great boat to save his family and the seeds of all living things from a world-destroying deluge sent by a displeased council of gods. The parallels are unmistakable. In the Andes, the Inca spoke of an ancient time when the world was flooded, a great inundation that wiped the slate clean, leaving only a few survivors on high mountaintops to repopulate the earth. Even Plato, writing in ancient Greece, recounted a story he learned from Egyptian priests about a mighty empire called Atlantis, a sophisticated civilization that sank beneath the waves in a single day and night of cataclysmic violence. These are not just tales of a bad storm, they are foundational memories of a global reset. Geologist Dr. Robert Schoch has pointed to geological evidence for a series of massive solar-induced events around 12,000 years ago, a period that coincides with the end of the last ice age. This was not a gentle warming, it was a violent upheaval with melting ice caps causing sea levels to rise hundreds of feet and perhaps triggering enormous tsunamis that scoured coastlines across the planet. What if these myths are not mere fables but the faded historical records of those who lived through it? This leads to a radical yet compelling hypothesis. Imagine a single, advanced global culture existing before this great cataclysm, a civilization with a deep understanding of astronomy, engineering, and geometry. When the disaster struck, it fragmented this unified world. Scattered groups of survivors, the inheritors of this lost knowledge, found themselves washed up on the high grounds of a new world, in places like the Egyptian plateau, the Mesopotamian plains, and the Andean mountains. They carried with them the shattered pieces of their former greatness, the core principles of pyramid building, celestial observation, and sacred symbolism. This would perfectly explain the mystery we have been tracing. It was not a case of independent invention, but of shared inheritance. These survivor cultures, separated by oceans, were all trying to rebuild what was lost. They built pyramids not because it was a new idea, but because it was the old way, the sacred architecture of their ancestors. They encoded astronomical alignments to re-establish their place in a cosmos that had seemingly gone mad. They told stories of floods and world ages to ensure their children would never forget the trauma that reshaped the earth. This single, devastating event could be the missing link that connects the pyramids of Giza to the ziggurats of Ur and the sacred platforms of the Andes. They were all rebuilding from the same blueprint, a blueprint salvaged from the ruins of a drowned world. The stones and stars whisper their secrets, but the most profound message is written in the silent, universal language of mathematics. Embedded within the very proportions of these ancient structures are mathematical constants, concepts so advanced they seem to defy the era of their construction. The Great Pyramid of Giza offers the most famous example. The ratio of its perimeter to its height is remarkably close to 2 times pi, the constant that defines the relationship between a circle's circumference and its diameter. This is not a rough approximation. It is a precise geometric principle built into the pyramid's core design. Furthermore, the layout and chamber placements within the pyramid reveal an intimate understanding of the golden ratio, a special number, approximately 1.618, that appears throughout nature in everything from the spiral of a seashell to the arrangement of seeds in a sunflower. This ratio is celebrated for its unique aesthetic and structural properties, and its presence in the pyramid is deliberate. Far to the east, the Mesopotamian ziggurats, though constructed from different materials, were laid out with the same mathematical precision. Their tiered step design was not arbitrary. Each level, the angles of the stairways, and the overall proportions were calculated using a sophisticated base 60 numerical system. This system allowed them to execute complex geometric plans and maintain perfect symmetry in their massive constructions, a feat that required far more than simple rule of thumb measurement. It was a true, applied science of form and space. High in the Andes, this mathematical fingerprint appears once more. At the fortress of Ollantaytambo, the immense stone terraces and precisely angled walls are laid out according to complex geometric patterns. The buildings and plazas of Machu Picchu are oriented along sacred axes that resonate with these same harmonic ratios, integrating their architecture directly into the mathematical fabric of the surrounding mountains. Why is this so significant? The mathematician Dr. Livio Catulo Stecchini dedicated his life to studying these ancient systems of measurement. He argued that the consistent use of these universal constants reveals a shared, advanced knowledge base. Pi and the golden ratio are not cultural inventions like a style of art or a specific myth. They are fundamental truths of geometry, discoveries that require deep, abstract thought. To find these same complex discoveries encoded into the primary monuments of 3 isolated civilizations suggests something extraordinary. It means the architects were not merely master builders. They were scientists and mathematicians who understood the universe operates on a mathematical blueprint. The odds of 3 different cultures independently uncovering these specific, non-intuitive constants and then choosing to highlight them in their most important buildings are vanishingly small. This points irrevocably to a common teacher, a lost civilization that first mapped the hidden numbers of the world and passed this ultimate knowledge down through the ages, leaving its signature in stone across the globe. These celestial maps were not sketched on parchment, but carved into the very bones of the earth. The 3 stars of Orion's belt, for instance, are mirrored with stunning accuracy by the 3 great pyramids at Giza, a terrestrial reflection of the celestial hunter that is far too precise to be a product of chance. This is an alignment frozen in stone, a deliberate act to bind the landscape to the heavens. Across the world in Mesopotamia, the focus shifted from the fixed stars to a wandering god. The ziggurats, those towering stairways to the divine, were meticulously oriented to track the complex cycles of the planet Venus. This was no simple task. Venus moves in a repetitive 8-year cycle of morning and evening appearances, a dance far more complicated than the steady march of the sun. To encode this planetary rhythm into the very orientation of their greatest temples required generations of patient, precise observation. And then, high in the Andes, the Inca created perhaps the most ambitious model of all. The sec system radiating from the Coricancha temple in Cusco was more than just a collection of sacred pathways. Researchers like Dr. R. Tom Zuidma have argued it functioned as a massive land-based calendar and a symbolic map of the Milky Way. Each of the 41 lines or sects was linked to specific celestial events and social groups, turning the entire valley into a living, breathing astronomical clock and a mirror of the cosmic order above. The sophistication here is breathtaking. These cultures were not merely noting the sunrise, they were tracking the slow, grand wobble of the Earth's axis, a 26,000-year cycle known as the precession of the equinoxes. This subtle shift causes the entire starry vault to slowly drift over centuries. To detect precession requires meticulous, long-term record-keeping spanning hundreds of years, a project that demands an unbroken chain of dedicated observers. How could Egypt, Mesopotamia, and the Andes all develop the institutional capacity for such long-term science? The parallel development of this specific, complex astronomical knowledge implies something profound. It suggests a shared, long-lost epoch of observation, a golden age of stargazing where this foundational data was first compiled. Imagine a forgotten civilization that dedicated itself to mapping the sky over millennia, patiently recording the slow dance of the planets and the gradual precession of the stars. When that culture faded or fell, its great celestial archive survived in fragments. The later civilizations we know so well, from the Egyptians to the Inca, may not have been the original discoverers but the inheritors. They were building their pyramids and ziggurats and sects using a celestial blueprint they received from a much older, far more ancient teacher, a teacher whose name is now lost to time, but whose lessons are written in the silent language of the stars. This bold idea forces a complete rethinking of our origins. The theory of a lost mother culture proposes that a single, sophisticated society was the common ancestor to all later civilizations. In the 19th century, thinkers like Ignatius Donnelly looked at the global parallels in pyramid building, agriculture, and writing, and saw not coincidence but colonization. He and others argued that a single advanced source civilization, which some call Atlantis, sent out seafarers and settlers across the globe, planting the seeds of knowledge that would later bloom in Egypt, Mesopotamia, and the Americas. This was not a slow, organic process of independent discovery, but a deliberate act of cultural transmission from a forgotten center. Modern proponents of this theory have shifted the possible location from a mythical island to real, now submerged landscapes. They point to vast continental shelves like Doggerland, a fertile plain that once connected Great Britain to Europe before being swallowed by rising seas around 6,000 years ago. Another candidate is the Sunda Shelf in Southeast Asia, a huge expanse of land that connected islands like Java and Borneo to the Asian mainland during the last ice age. These were not insignificant swamps, they were vast habitable territories, potentially home to complex societies whose entire history is now buried beneath the waves. The lack of concrete, sunken ruins is the most frequent and powerful criticism leveled against this theory. Mainstream archaeology demands physical proof, and without a submerged city to point to, the mother culture remains in the realm of speculation. Yet the theory endures because it offers something that the standard model of isolated development struggles to provide: a simple and elegant solution to an incredibly complex puzzle. It answers the nagging question of why with a single, profound answer, because they all learned from the same teacher. This idea, however controversial, opens a thrilling door of possibility. It suggests that the timeline of human civilization is not a straight line from primitive to advanced, but a cycle with forgotten peaks. It proposes that our recorded history is merely the latest chapter, built upon the drowned foundations of a world we have yet to remember. This is not just about finding lost cities, it is about rediscovering a lost epoch of humanity, a chapter of our story that could change everything we know about who we are and where we come from. Of course, the idea of a shared global teacher is not the only explanation on the table. We must confront the powerful counter-argument from mainstream academia, the theory of independent invention. Leading scholars like Dr. Bruce Trigger present a compelling case grounded in human universals. They argue that when you place any human society under similar pressures, you will see remarkably similar solutions emerge, not through contact, but through a kind of convergent cultural evolution. Think of it like two isolated tribes on opposite sides of a mountain, both inventing the spear to hunt. The need for food and protection drives them to the same logical conclusion, using a sharp point on a long stick. In the same way, when a society grows large enough to become a civilization, it faces a universal set of problems. How do you organize thousands of people to build cities? You create a centralized government and a class of administrators. How do you feed them all? You develop intensive agriculture and complex irrigation. How do you unite them under a common belief system? You construct monumental temples that reach for the heavens. The pyramid shape, in this view, is simply the most stable and logical form for a massive stone structure. It is the inevitable architectural answer to the question of how to build tall and make it last. This perspective does not diminish the brilliance of these cultures. Instead, it celebrates the incredible, innate, innovative capacity of the human mind. Skeptics rightly point to the undeniable differences in the details. The Mesopotamian ziggurat was a busy temple complex, a bustling center of daily religious life where priests ascended to meet the gods. The Egyptian pyramid was a sealed, silent tomb, a sacred machine designed for a single royal journey to the afterlife. The Andean Ushnu was an open-air platform for ritual observation and imperial ceremony. Their functions, while all sacred, were distinctly unique. The development of writing, mathematics, and statehood, archaeologists note, appears in the historical record like separate flowers blooming in different gardens, each following its own predictable life cycle. From this vantage point, the parallels we see are extraordinary coincidences, the result of different minds independently discovering the same fundamental truths of engineering, society, and the cosmos. It is a story of human genius repeating itself, not a mystery of forgotten connections. This is a powerful and logical argument, one that has shaped our understanding of history for over a century. Yet it leaves a persistent, lingering question. Can convergent evolution really account for the sheer depth and specificity of these parallels, down to the same astronomical alignments, the same mythological archetypes, and the same encoded mathematical constants? When the same complex blueprint appears in three different, isolated workshops, at some point we must ask if the inventors were truly working alone. There is a third path through this mystery, one that charts a course between isolated invention and a single lost teacher. This is the theory of indirect diffusion, a slow and subtle percolation of knowledge along the ancient world's forgotten trade routes. We know of the legendary Silk Road, but what of the routes that existed millennia before it, the invisible web of pathways that connected the world in the deep past? The physical evidence for these connections is already in museums. Archaeologists have unearthed beads of lapis lazuli, a vibrant blue stone that can only be sourced from a single region in Afghanistan, within Egyptian tombs and Mesopotamian royal hoards. High in the Andes, shells from the distant Pacific Ocean have been found in ancient highland burials. These were not just trinkets, they were prized commodities that traveled thousands of miles, passing from hand to hand, from caravan to boat, across continents and through generations. Where precious objects travel, people travel with them, and where people go, their ideas are carried along as silent cargo. Imagine a master craftsman in the Indus Valley showing a trader from Mesopotamia a new technique for casting bronze. That trader, months later, might share the basic principle with a metalsmith in Anatolia, who would then adapt it with local materials. A century later, that adapted knowledge might reach the workshops of Egypt. The original idea is transformed, yet its core essence persists. This is how a complex innovation, like the potter's wheel or a sophisticated astronomical concept, could have slowly seeped across the globe. It was not a deliberate broadcast of knowledge, but a gradual cultural osmosis. This model elegantly explains the puzzling mix of profound similarities and stark differences we see. The core idea of a pyramid, a massive raised platform for connecting with the divine, could have spread along these routes, but when it reached the deserts of Egypt, it was adapted into a smooth-sided tomb for a god-king. In Mesopotamia, the same concept became a stepped temple bustling with priests. In the Andes, it transformed into a sacred Ashnu platform for solar observation. The shared blueprint is visible, but the local execution is beautifully unique. This slow-motion diffusion does not require that an Egyptian sailor ever set foot in Peru. It only requires that the world was far more interconnected than we ever knew, with ideas flowing like water through a vast subterranean network of human contact. The knowledge was not lost then. It was simply shared, one conversation at a time, across countless campfires and market stalls, slowly weaving a common thread of understanding through the tapestry of the ancient world. These civilizing heroes appear across the ancient world like echoes of the same profound event. In Egypt, the god Osiris was far more than a deity of the afterlife. He was the original lawgiver. He taught humanity the secrets of agriculture, showing them how to cultivate the wild wheat and barley, and he established the sacred rites and laws that formed the bedrock of Egyptian society. His journey was one of knowledge, bringing order from chaos. Across the Mediterranean, the Mesopotamians told of a truly bizarre figure emerging from the waters of the Persian Gulf. This was Ons, a being described as part man and part fish. He would appear during the day, they said, to instruct the people in everything from writing and mathematics to the principles of law and city building, before returning to the sea at night. Then, high in the Andes, the creator god Viracocha fulfilled this identical role. After a great flood had wiped the world clean, he emerged from Lake Titicaca, a bearded, majestic figure in a long tunic. He traveled the land, restoring civilization by teaching stonework, agriculture, and moral codes to the scattered survivors. The parallels are too specific to ignore. Each of these figures is depicted as an outsider, often with a beard, arriving from across the water. Each one is a non-violent teacher, a bringer of the essential arts of civilization, not a conqueror. And each one, after their work is done, departs as mysteriously as they arrived. Comparative mythologist Dr. David Leeming has studied these archetypes extensively, identifying them as a recurring global motif, the civilizing hero. This is not just a shared symbol like the serpent or the sun. It is a shared story, a complete narrative with the same core plot. Why would cultures with no known contact all invent the same detailed legend of a wise, foreign teacher arriving by sea? Could these myths be the faded but persistent memory of a real historical event? They read less like invented fables and more like a collective recollection, a cultural imprint left by actual contact with advanced travelers. Imagine a group of seafarers, survivors from a more sophisticated culture, making landfall on a primitive shore. To the local population, their knowledge of astronomy, their ability to work stone, and their understanding of agriculture would have seemed nothing short of divine. These visitors would literally have been the bearers of civilization. the stories of their arrival, amplified over centuries of retelling, would naturally transform into the myths of Osiris, Ons, and Viracocha. The consistency of this narrative across the globe is a powerful testament, not to the human imagination, but to a shared experience buried deep in our past. It suggests that the foundations of our earliest civilizations may not have been purely homegrown, but were sparked by contact with a forgotten source of wisdom, a legacy remembered in the oldest stories we tell. These stone surfaces tell a silent story of impossible tools. In the quarries of Aswan, Egypt, a massive unfinished obelisk remains trapped in the bedrock, its sides marked with deep, perfectly straight grooves. Analysis of these cuts in granite, one of the hardest stones on Earth, reveals a saw that removed material with a relentless, steady feed rate, a feat that would challenge our own diamond-tipped blades. The evidence suggests the tool did not struggle, it simply ate through the stone as if it were butter. This is not the work of pounding with dolerite hammers. This is precision machining. Far to the east, in the heart of ancient Mesopotamia, craftsmen drilled into solid basalt. The cores extracted from these holes reveal something astonishing, a consistent, fine spiral groove running the entire length, indicating a drill bit that advanced with immense, unwavering pressure and a remarkably fast rotation. This is not a simple bow drill used for starting fires. This is a tool with significant mechanical advantage, a technology for which we have no clear archaeological record. Then, high in the Andes, the mystery deepens beyond simple cuts and holes. Look at the polygonal walls of Sacsayhuamán. The stones are not just flat slabs. They are complex, three-dimensional shapes with perfectly curved concave surfaces that mate exactly with the convex surfaces of their neighbors. You cannot achieve this fit by pounding rock against rock. It suggests a process more akin to molding or milling, where the stone was somehow worked until it plastically conformed to its adjoining block. Modern stonemasons and engineers who visit these sites often leave baffled. They point out that bronze tools, the hardest metal these cultures are supposed to have possessed, are utterly insufficient for this work. Bronze is softer than granite. You cannot cut granite with a bronze saw, you would only wear out the saw. The logical conclusion is as unsettling as it is compelling. The builders must have possessed tools or techniques that are lost to our historical narrative. Perhaps they used a form of sonic vibration to resonate the stone to a point where it could be shaped. Maybe they had discovered a chemical agent, a plant-based solvent that could temporarily soften the crystalline structure of the rock, allowing it to be worked like clay. The specific method remains a mystery, but the outcome is undeniable. The parallel presence of this anachronistic technology on 3 separate continents is a deafening silence in our history books. It points to a shared, sophisticated industrial knowledge, a common toolbox for mastering the very bones of the earth, a toolbox that has since vanished from our understanding. The bull stands as another powerful symbol echoing across these ancient worlds. In the sun-baked land of Egypt, the Apis bull was not merely a prized animal, it was a living god, the sacred embodiment of the creator deity Ptah. This bull was chosen through specific divine markings, housed in a special temple, and upon its death, it was mummified and entombed with the pomp of a pharaoh, its death and rebirth seen as vital to the fertility of the entire kingdom. Its strength was the strength of the nation. Far to the east in Mesopotamia, the bull's power thundered through their greatest story, the Epic of Gilgamesh. Here, the bull of heaven is a celestial monster sent by the gods as a weapon of divine retribution, its very breath capable of carving chasms in the earth. The slaying of this cosmic beast represents humanity's ultimate challenge to divine authority. and everywhere in Mesopotamian art, from the massive lamashu guardians at palace gates to the intricate reliefs on cylinder seals, the bull symbolized unshakable royal power and the raw, generative force of nature. Then, crossing the ocean to the high Andes, we find a fascinating adaptation. There were no native cattle in South America, but the core idea of a sacred, fertile herd animal did not disappear, it transformed. The llama and the alpaca, the camelids of the mountains, inherited this symbolic role. They were the economic backbone of the Inca Empire, providing wool, meat, and transport, but they were also deeply ritual creatures. Pure white llamas were specially selected for sacrifice to Intai, the sun god. Their lives offered to ensure the continued fertility of the land and the favor of the heavens. The form changed from a bull to a llama, but the underlying meaning remained perfectly intact, the veneration of a powerful animal whose life force was directly tied to the civilization's survival. This is the hallmark of a transferred idea. It is not a carbon copy, but an intelligent adaptation. The fundamental concept of a sacred, fertile beast of burden, essential to both the economy and the spirit, was carried across the world. When it reached a new environment with different fauna, the people did not discard the concept, they simply applied it to the most powerful and vital animal in their own world. This symbolic consistency, where the core meaning survives even as the physical form shifts, points strongly to a shared underlying mythology, a common set of archetypes that traveled along with the knowledge of pyramid building and celestial observation, painting a fuller picture of a deeply interconnected ancient mind. The stones themselves seem to yearn for connection with an unseen world. One of the most profound and specific architectural parallels found across these civilizations is the concept of the false door. In the deep, silent darkness of an Egyptian mastaba tomb, you would find a meticulously carved stone slab, shaped exactly like a doorway, complete with a false lintel and frame. But this door led nowhere, it was sealed solid. For the Egyptians, this was not a decorative element, it was a functional spiritual conduit, a portal designed for the Ka, the eternal spirit of the deceased, to pass through and receive offerings from the world of the living. It was the thin, sacred boundary between two realities. Far to the east, in the temples of ancient Mesopotamia, we see a strikingly similar idea expressed through different forms. The walls were often adorned with intricate patterns of niches and reeds, a design that some researchers interpret as abstract symbolic gateways. These were not physical doors one could walk through, but they represented thresholds, sacred entry points through which the presence of a god could enter the human-built temple and bless the space. Now, journey across the world to the high-altitude plains of the Andes, to the enigmatic site of Tiwanaku. Here stands the monumental Gate of the Sun, a single, massive stone archway carved from a single block of andesite. It does not lead into a palace or a storeroom, it stands alone, a free-standing portal. Researchers believe it was a focal point for ritual, a cosmic gateway through which priests and spirits could symbolically pass during ceremonies, bridging the earthly and celestial planes. This is a stunning convergence. 3 different cultures, using their own unique styles and materials, all incorporated a non-functional architectural element whose sole purpose was to represent a threshold to another realm. This is not a practical solution to a building problem, it is a philosophical one carved in stone. It reveals a shared, fundamental belief in a multi-layered universe, a cosmos divided into the world we see and the spirit world we cannot. Their architecture was not merely shelter, it was a medium for communication, a sacred technology designed to mediate between the human and the divine, the mortal and the eternal. The consistent appearance of this specific symbolic element suggests they were not just building structures, They were building bridges to the same invisible shore. The pursuit of wisdom in these ancient worlds often meant stepping through a doorway in the mind. For the priest and the shaman, true knowledge was not found in dusty scrolls alone, but in the visionary realms unlocked by sacred plants. Along the Nile, the intoxicating fragrance of the blue lotus flower filled the ceremonial air. Egyptian art frequently depicts this beautiful bloom being held to the nose, its mild psychoactive properties gently altering consciousness to facilitate communion with the gods. It was a tool for divine connection, a key to a higher state of perception. Far to the east, in the temples of Mesopotamia, the methods may have been more potent. Clay tablets and artifact analysis suggest priests used opium and other powerful substances to induce prophetic dreams and ecstatic visions, tearing down the veil between the human and divine worlds to receive messages they believed came directly from the gods. This same profound impulse echoes high in the Andes. Here, the coca leaf was not just a stimulant for enduring the high altitude, it was a sacred offering, a mediator in rituals. And the shamanic brews, particularly ayahuasca, were the ultimate vehicles for spiritual travel. These complex concoctions, brewed from vines and leaves, were considered teachers, opening the mind to healing, prophecy, and direct conversation with the spirit world. The renowned ethnobotanist Dr. Terence McKenna put forth a radical theory, suggesting that plant-induced states were the very catalyst for the dawn of human self-awareness and creativity. He proposed that these natural chemicals jolted the early human brain, sparking the development of language, art, and symbolic thought. While his ideas remain controversial, they highlight a profound and undeniable parallel. Across these three isolated civilizations, we see a shared, deliberate use of entheogens, substances believed to reveal the divine within. This was not recreational. It was a sophisticated spiritual technology. They all understood that to access the deepest truths about the cosmos, about healing, and about their own place in the universe, they had to quiet the noise of the ordinary world and listen to the whispers from another reality. This consistent practice of seeking wisdom through altered states suggests a common thread in their understanding of consciousness itself, a belief that the ultimate source of knowledge was just a sacred brew or a sacred flower away. The very tools we use to measure our modern world may carry the ghost of this ancient knowledge. From the Egyptian cubit, based on the length of a man's forearm, to the Mesopotamian foot and the Andean rikra, which measured the span between outstretched hands, these foundational units all sprang from the human body. This was not a random choice. It was a way of grounding their architecture and their understanding of the cosmos in the most universal standard available, the human form itself. But the connection goes far deeper than simple anatomy. Independent researchers like John Mitchell have proposed a radical idea that these ancient units were not just personal but planetary. They argue that the Egyptian royal cubit, for instance, was not merely a convenient length, but a precise fraction of the Earth's polar circumference. This means the pyramid builders may have been encoding the dimensions of the planet itself into their local measurements. This theory becomes even more compelling when we look at the measurement systems that have shaped the modern world. The British imperial system, with its feet and inches, does not have a clear, logical origin in medieval Europe. Its units bear a strange and persistent relationship to these much older geodetic standards. Even the metric system, which we consider a product of the Enlightenment, was originally intended to be based on the Earth's dimensions, with the meter defined as 1/10,000,000th of the distance from the equator to the North Pole. We are, in a very real sense, still using a simplified version of the pyramid builders' global science. So the next time you measure a room with a tape marked in feet, consider the profound journey of that unit of length. That foot in your hand is not just 12 inches, it is a potential relic, a distant echo of a standard unit perfected in a lost global civilization. It connects the act of building a backyard shed directly back to the architects of the Great Pyramid. Their legacy is not locked away in silent ruins, it is alive in the very tools we use to shape our environment today, a hidden thread of forgotten knowledge woven into the fabric of our daily lives. Each of these threads alone could be dismissed as an anomaly, a simple coincidence of the human mind. Yet when you weave them together, the tapestry tells a different story. The architectural precision, the celestial alignments, the shared symbols of serpent and sun, the civilizing hero myths, the advanced stoneworking and metallurgy, the sacred measurements, and the global flood memories all converge. The chance that every one of these complex cultural expressions developed in perfect, isolated parallel defies belief. This is no longer a collection of curiosities, but a constellation of connections pointing toward a single, inescapable reality. Our ancestors were not isolated. They were participants in a vast, ancient conversation, a slow exchange of ideas that spanned continents and millennia. The evidence does not demand that we believe in a single sunken city like Atlantis, but it absolutely compels us to accept that the channels of communication were open. Whether through deliberate voyages of teacher-priests, the slow percolation of knowledge along forgotten trade routes, or the legacy of a common ancestor culture, the result is the same. The pyramid builders of Egypt, the ziggurat architects of Mesopotamia, and the master stonemasons of the Andes were all working from pages of the same forgotten textbook. This synthesis shatters the conventional timeline of history, which paints a picture of humanity slowly and laboriously inventing civilization in separate, lonely corners of the world. Instead, we see a web, a global network of shared innovation and spiritual insight. Our past is not a series of isolated events, but a symphony of interconnected genius, a story whose opening chapters are still waiting to be read. The mysterious knowledge transfer linking Egypt, Mesopotamia, and the Andes remains one of history's most captivating puzzles. We have journeyed across continents and through millennia, from the monumental stones that touch the sky to the precise mathematical constants hidden within their designs. We have traced the shared symbols of serpent and sun in their sacred art, and listened to the echoes of world-altering floods and civilizing heroes in their oldest stories. This exploration reveals a profound truth, not a story of isolated genius, but one of a potentially connected, ancient global community. While the mechanisms of this connection are still debated and many questions remain unanswered, the sheer weight of the parallels compels us to look beyond the conventional narrative. The pursuit of this mystery in itself enriches our understanding of human potential and resilience. It challenges us to see our ancestors not as primitive people stumbling toward civilization, but as brilliant, innovative, and deeply interconnected societies. Perhaps the greatest lesson is that they were capable of far more and knew far more than we often credit them for. Let this be an open invitation to keep questioning the established stories, to keep exploring the hidden corners of our past, and to keep looking for the subtle threads that bind our world together. What connections have you noticed in your own explorations of history? Share your thoughts on this enduring mystery in the comments below, and subscribe for more journeys into the depths of history's greatest enigmas.